on a mission. Grinding for that spot, a brand new pot to piss in. Trying to school my partners, I don't think they pay attention. Sticking to my vision, on the road to the riches. Every single day, I'm a hustle on a mission. Trying to get 100 M's, nigga, I ain't kidding. I'm on a mission, 24/7, 365, until I reach the heavens.
Need to roll up again. Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years. Don't call it a comeback. Well, what do you know, y'all? Welcome back to the Lit House. Whatever you do, keep the light within you shining bright. You feel me? Fuck that shade. Get paid, and that's every single motherfucking day. And never forget, real niggas do what they want to do. Bitch niggas do what they can. Hoe ass niggas gonna talk about it, and fuck niggas gonna hate regardless. I promise you that. So do your shit to the motherfucking fullest, nigga. And it looks like another one, another powerful man brought down by the pussy. I need to roll up another one because of this shit. I did come in here with that. Yeah, I did. Cool. All right, so damn, man. The saga continues, bro. Of great men, of great leaders being brought down by a woman, by a female, the opposite sex. Yep, that's how it happens. That's how it happens, man. That's how it happens. That's how it happens. As men, bro, we gotta decide. We got a real important decision to make, bro. And it ain't all of them, but I'm just saying majority is gonna be your downfall, big dog. Majority of women gonna end up ultimately being your downfall. Ultimately, bro. Pay attention to this shit. You got to pay attention to this shit. You gonna have to make a decision, my boy. You gonna have to make a decision as a man in America. You gonna have to make a decision, bro. Do you want to be successful as you can be, or do your ass want to be in love? Do you want to be as secure, stable as you can be? I mean, if you want to be a success, I'm talking. You want to be. If you want to have a real chance at being successful and staying that way for a long time, you going it's gonna require you to keep these bitches at a distance. I'm telling you, boy, it's gonna require that shit, boy. You might as well goddamn get ready. You gonna have to deal with. You gonna have to come with the realization of a life where you can't keep the same bitch around for too long. If you keep a bitch around long at all, mm, unless you gonna get that bitch from somewhere else. mm, I don't even know if you're gonna get. I don't. This motherfucker was this a Mexican. We gonna get to the story, but he was Mexican cartel, so I'm guessing the woman was probably Mexican. So it really don't matter, bro. I don't think it matters, bitch. Africa, they got their own internet now. They ain't fucking with our internet. They ain't got a motherfucking wait on the buffering time and all that shit. We could tap into their internet shit. We could go all that. We could go see what's up on their side. See what's up with the real Africa. Man, listen, niggas worldwide gonna have to make a decision. There's gonna have to be a decision made worldwide about this shit, man. How successful do you want to be without any slip ups? If you really want a chance at building a real empire that doesn't fall, you gonna have to have them bitches under 100% surveillance. you gonna have to have you gonna have to have an AI bitch. You gonna have to have an AI bitch like that bitch on Eagle Eye. You gonna have to have a bitch like Eagle Eye watching the bitch that you fuck with. G shit. You gonna have to have a bitch off Eagle Eye or some shit like that. You gonna have to have an AI bitch to keep your real bitch in check. To keep your real bitch under surveillance. As soon as some shit happen and an alert come up, that let you know, leave that bitch alone. That let you know, don't even call that bitch no more. Change your number, switch it up on the bitch. For real. You gonna need an AI bitch to watch these real bitches. If you intend on having an empire and keeping that shit without that bitch falling, without anybody sabotaging that bitch. Well, let's get into the story, man. Let's get into this shit, bro. Another one bites the dust. And it says here, El Mencho was set up by a woman. And whatever that said, I can't really see. We're gonna palette something. Well, whatever. Let's go to Palantry. Palantry. By woman and Palantry. Palantir. Oh, Palantir. I'm saying. I reversed them. So Palantir. All right. Anyway, man, let's see what the fuck going on. I said I want to watch this nigga. I know, but
continuing in Mexico
I gotta
after the
see, right?
assassination of cartel leader El Mencho. The streets are still burning in Mexico. There's reports now that as many as 60 plus people have actually lost their lives fighting
Damn.
with the cartels since El Mencho's death. And in this video, I'm going to tell you a little bit of the backstory about how he actually ended up getting caught up. And they're saying that he might have gotten backdoored by a female. He might have actually ended up getting set up because a romantic partner. Let's just say that. I don't want to say anything disrespectful about the cartels, but it's very, very sad. It's very interesting to see that, you know, these cartel leaders, they're going through the same thing we hear about with these Chicago gangsters, people getting backdoored, set up, a meeting with a female ends up dropping your location. And unfortunately, that can lead to your death, whether it's in the streets of Chicago, whether it's in the heights of the cartel business in Mexico. So I'm going to break that all down to you in this video. But firstly, I want to just play you some of the news about the escalating death toll.
The other cartel leader got caught with his bitch was taking all them pictures of them exotic birds or some shit on the motherfucking beach. They caught his ass the next day after she posted that shit out there. Man, bro. Diddy in jail because of Cassie. in the case they built on him talking about sex trafficking. Cosby was in jail because a bitch lied on him about some shit that happened years ago. I want to say Tony Montana was set up by a bitch, but he kind of fucked that. He kind of did that to himself. Tony Montana. But in the real world, boy, niggas' downfall is a bitch, and it's fucked up. It's motherfucking fucked up, boy. Self-preservation, my boy. You better not believe shit out here. How the fuck this shit going? I don't know. But anyway.
With this violence that's followed El Mencho's assassination, because as we're seeing here, just a day ago, the BBC were reporting over 62 people had actually died in the fallout that occurred after the assassination. Check this out.
Authorities in Mexico say at least 62 people have been killed following a wave of violence that broke out after the killing of the country's most wanted man. El Mencho, the leader of the new Jalisco New Generation cartel, died after being captured by Mexican special forces on Sunday. Thousands of troops have now been deployed to help bolster security across the country following a wave of reprisal attacks. The government has ordered civilians to stay indoors as violent unrest spread to popular tourist destinations such as Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara. Our Central America correspondent Will Grant sent this report from the city of Guadalajara, which in 4 months is set to host the Football World Cup.
The aftermath of drug cartel fury. In the hours after their leader was killed, foot soldiers of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, the most powerful drug gang in Mexico, went on the rampage, burning cars, blocking roads, spreading fear. Incidents were registered in 20 of Mexico's 32 states, the cartel present in every corner of the country. And this is the man whose killing prompted such violence. Nemesio Oseguera, better known as El Mencho, the petty drug dealer who rose to become the most wanted man in Mexico with a $15 million reward on his head. For Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, the victory lap over El Mencho was tempered by the violence unfolding on the streets, but she insisted normality was returning.
Today, there is more calm and there is government, there are armed forces, there is a security cabinet, and there is a lot of coordination. So you can rest assured that peace, security, and normality in the country are being safeguarded.
Well, look, they're trying to get a handle of the situation. The BBC were reporting yesterday that over 62 people have died. However, there are unofficial sources, especially on Reddit, that are basically saying the death toll could be much, much higher, and things have really just remained out of control. This is an update on Reddit r/Mexico, and basically here we're going to join r/Mexico. It says Mexico drug cartel war update: 75 dead, 70 arrested, 35 army members and 25 cartel members are dead. Now, is that mathing? I think it might not be, but maybe it is. But basically, it says here, according to the latest date from Tuesday, February the 24th, 2026, 75 dead, 70 arrested, 35, that'd be the arrests, 35 members of the army and 25 members of the cartel, probably some innocent people in there too. And, we were hearing it could have been as many as 100 people that had lost their lives in this. As of today, the situation in Puerto Vallarta has calmed significantly after Sunday's retaliatory violence following El Mencho's death. Roadblocks are mostly cleared, restaurants opening, and no tourist deaths have been reported now. That if the tourists start dying, Mexico is going to be in a terminal decline. Okay, I'm not saying it's okay that anybody's lost their lives, but if the Mexican president's worried about one thing, it's about tourists losing their lives in this just crazy situation. It says PVR airport is open. Flights have resumed. Many airlines operating today, some with modified schedules. Check your airline directly. The US embassy is still urging shelter in place in Puerto Vallarta and Jalisco. Minimize movement and monitor local authorities. Okay, now the comments are in Spanish, so I can't read those. But basically, we've had new updates from Mexico's Secretary of Defense, and he's basically shared more details about the actual takedown itself that involved El Mencho's romantic partner, the backdooring from a female. And there's quite a lot to this, so I'm gonna react to this long video, and I'm gonna kind of break it down and give you some more context as we go. But this is crazy how it all went down.
Regarding the operation that was carried out yesterday, by way of background, I can tell you that Ruben N., also known as El Mencho, head of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, began his involvement in drug trafficking in the 1990s in Michoacan as a member of the Valencia group.
That's what the term crazy as a bitch.
Since that time, he has already started to be considered a significant target.
We all know bitches is crazy. Why you think the term crazy as a bitch exists? That the term crazy as a bitch exists for a reason. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Even R. Kelly had a song called When a Woman's Fed Up. Bitch, that boy, it ain't nothing you could do about it. What the fuck did she find in that nigga phone to set him up to be killed?
Subsequently, in May 2016,
but there was another story saying they may have killed the wrong person. So is he really dead?
the United States added him to its list of most wanted fugitives, and he was wanted by a court in the Western District of Texas.
So bear in mind, right, this guy really rose up the ranks from the cartel from, you know, as they said in that BBC report, a petty drug dealer to becoming literally the head of one of the most powerful and feared, if not the most feared, cartel in the whole country. We've talked previously about how the Sinaloa cartel maybe was a little bit more about their business, and El Mencho's crew were, I mean, I spoke about it in a previous video, they were engaging in acts of cannibalism, they were completely militarized. They're probably the most fearsome group in the country. And the fact that he came from nothing, from humble beginnings to the very top, is impressive. But as he said, you know, he was getting warrants issued for him in Texas. They were moving drugs through America. He was on the radar of the Americans. And unfortunately, that's when you really are running out of time. When the Americans lock in on you, there's not really too much to be said after that. It's really a matter of when, not if.
In August 2018, the Attorney General's office offered a reward of 30 million pesos for information leading to the capture of El Mencho. In December 2024, the United States government offered $15 million for information leading to the capture of this individual. With central military intelligence and additional information from the institutions of the Security Cabinet, as well as from United States institutions, the Secretariat of National Defense tracked El Mencho's network of connections until the conditions were right to plan an operation for his arrest.
I didn't know that. Now, hold on. Rewind that.
With central military intelligence and additional information from the institutions of the Security Cabinet, as well as from United States institutions, the Secretariat of National Defense tracked El Mencho's network of connections until the conditions were right to plan an operation for his arrest. Defense for information leading to the capture of this individual. 2024, the United States government offered $15 million for information leading to the capture of this individual.
2 years ago, they offered 15
With
million.
central military intelligence and additional information from the institutions of the Security Cabinet, as well as from United States institutions, the Secretariat of National Defense tracked El Mencho's network of connections until the conditions were right to plan an operation for his arrest. As you all know very well, the intelligence process is very complicated and requires a lot of time. It requires gathering a great deal of information, many data points, and numerous clues from various sources, both national and international. Mexico has agreements, even with other countries and organizations such as Interpol and Europol, among others. We, as the armed forces, have greatly strengthened our relationship with the United States Northern Command, and that exchange of information is extremely important. On February 20th, through Central Military Intelligence Operations, a trusted associate of one of Mencho's romantic partners was located, who transported her to a facility in the town of Tapalpa, Jalisco.
So basically, they located a trusted confidant of El Mencho's, and it was connected to the partner. I want to play that again, right? A trusted one of his basically a trusted associates of one of his romantic partners was connected to him. Now, once they get your location, once the Americans get onto you, doesn't matter whether it's a woman, but it just goes to show you how human these guys are. Yeah, he's the biggest, baddest cartel leader in the world. They're engaging in acts of cannibalism. They're a fully militarized force that are shooting down Mexican military helicopters. I'm not trying to disrespect the guy's got a nut, you know, the guy's got to have his romantic partners. And unfortunately, these interpersonal relationships, like any normal person would have, you know, it doesn't matter if you're a cartel leader or the average person, you got your needs, you got your interpersonal relationships. And this, unfortunately, was his undoing.
Operations, a trusted associate of one of Mencho's romantic partners was located, who transported her to a facility in the town of Tapalpa, Jalisco. At that location, this romantic partner met with Mencho, and on February 21st, she left the property and information was obtained that Mencho, he remained at that location.
So she went to visit him at a property on the 21st of February. She left the property and then information was basically obtained. They didn't necessarily say it was gotten directly from her, but they didn't deny that either. But they're basically saying that her being there and going to the property, she was flown out. Hey, listen, the leaders of cartel flying chicks out just like anyone else. They found out where he was because she had been there. She left the property. The authorities knew that he was still there. And as you're going to hear, they got busy and they went and did what they had to do. But it's, you know, it's kind of humbling to realize that, you know, it's something this simple as him meeting up with they said romantic partner. We don't know if it's his wife, girlfriend. I don't know what El Mencho had going on. Okay, they were engaging in acts of cannibalism, so he could have had all sorts of crazy shit going on. But that was his undoing. It's crazy.
He remained at that location. He stayed there with a security circle. On the same February 21st, the operation planning was carried out. It is doctrinal. It is an axiom of military operations that are conducted. For those carried out by the armed forces around the world, the one who executes the operation must be the one to plan it. In this case, it was the Special Forces personnel and the immediate reaction Special Force personnel of the National Guard who planned the operation.
Now, it's interesting, right? Because he's basically saying, look, if the authority that is actually going to go and carry out this operation is actually going to go in there and do it, they have to plan it. I think what he's actually saying there, reading between the lines, he's kind of taking a bit of the heat off the Americans. Because I know there was a lot of anger. They were saying, oh, you know, we're going to take American hostages because the Americans played a role in this. Now, we're going to touch on it in a little bit more detail in a minute. But like, there's a lot of rumors that exactly what the Americans did to aid this. But clearly, this wasn't an American operation. This wasn't a U.S. forces operation. Maybe there was some support, some intelligence that was shared. But in reality, this clearly, you know, the Mexicans did this. They're not trying to say we did this with the Americans. They're not trying to put the heat on the Americans. Maybe they're trying to cover up for the Americans and say, look, we don't want these American tourists getting kidnapped. But they're making it very clear. In the Mexican National Guard, we planned this, put this together, we took our action, it's on us.
That same day, an operational force was organized, made up of 3 components: a ground unit, which consisted of personnel from the Joint Special Force, Army Special Forces, and the Immediate Reaction Special Force of the National Guard, as I mentioned. There was also an airmobile force made up of 6 helicopters and Special Forces personnel. This force would head to the area of operations in order to maintain secrecy, and with this, achieve surprise, take the initiative, and achieve surprise. They did not arrive in Jalisco. This force was under orders, on alert, in certain locations in states neighboring Jalisco. And the third component was this specialized military force provided crucial air support, using versatile Texan aircraft from the Mexican Air Force during the mission. Once it was officially confirmed, on the night of February 22nd, that is to say, during the late hours when Mencho's actual presence was fully corroborated, it was the specialized ground force that finally moved out to the location, to the place where he was located in order to carry out the arrest. If a perimeter is to be set up, El Mencho has 2 arrest warrants for organized crime. So it was going to be a cordon. We had information, of course, from the aerial platforms that the personnel were armed. So I was going to apply the federal firearms and explosives control law to stop them, also caught in the act. Then it moves. At this point, the security personnel working for Mencho opened fire directly on the military personnel who were stationed at the scene. After the confrontation, Mencho leaves the scene, leaving behind a group equipped with a large amount of high-caliber weaponry. It was truly a brutal and violent attack, systematically carried out by both organized crime personnel and the elite special forces military personnel. Despite the intensity of the assault, they successfully repelled the action.
So he's saying that while this was going on, they tried to build a cordon. They knew that all of these militarized forces that El Mencho had, they're not supposed to have those weapons. They were ready to enact law on them to basically, take them into custody, take them down for all the weaponry that they have, they shouldn't have. And he's saying that basically they went to war with the actual Mexican military while El Mencho tried to give them the slip and, escape out the back door that had been opened, essentially. And they're saying, no, that didn't work out. They ended up repelling the militarized cartel, and then they kept on chasing El Mencho.
They died there. In total, 8 criminals. Yesterday, it was reported that there had been 4, because that was the preliminary information we had at the time. As you well know, after the operations are finished, the entire area is then inspected, and 4 more bodies were found.
So they killed 8 people of El Mencho's forces, which arguably is, that is quite a lot of people, but at the same time, the way that they were going around militarized, it makes you wonder how many troops they actually had to go up against the Mexican army. And there's been times when, as we've heard, El Mencho's cartel had actually shot down Mexican army helicopters, killed army personnel. So the fact that it was only 8 is almost surprising.
7 long guns and 2 rocket launchers were seized. Of the rocket launchers, one was an RPG type and the other a blindicide.
That's crazy. So they're actually seizing weapons. They're getting RPGs from them. The same one we talked in a previous video about this cartel was actually shooting down military helicopters. They were ready. They had RPGs ready. And it's lucky that the air forces that were involved in the strike weren't shot down.
The RPG is a Russian rocket launcher, which, by the way, was the one used in 2015 to bring down an Air Force helicopter in the area of Outland de Navarro, specifically during an operation that had been set up to capture this criminal, was brought down.
No way. So what he said, wow. So they're saying that incident that I told you about previously where they actually shot down the Mexican helicopter, they said it was the same RPG. They said it was the same one. So they've got it back. They got it back in blood. But that is actually crazy because that was one of the wildest things I'd ever heard, that they'd actually done this operation and shot down a Mexican helicopter. And as he just said, that was a previous operation where they were trying to capture the same guy and they actually killed, they shot an army helicopter out of the sky and killed, I believe it was 4 Mexican military. So this really was the get back. And, they did it. They seized the RPG and everything.
8 vehicles were also seized, including 2 ATVs, as well as cartridges and magazines. El Mencho and his close circle fled and took refuge in a wooded area. This cabin complex was located on the outskirts of Tapalpa. So, adjacent to it was a wooded area, and that's where El Mencho and his close circle headed.
So they're saying that they chased him into this wooded area, right? And now look, I'm just imagining how crazy must be. Actually, cartel leader, the cops are on your tail, you've sent your soldiers to go and fight with the army, not the cops, the army, and literally running away from the army into the woods. I can't imagine, that is insane.
That boy shot this shit down with an RPG.
Just imagine what's going through your head at the point. Just is this really the army are onto me? He got 6-star wanted level at this point.
A perimeter is established and they are pursued. The special forces operatives eventually locate hiding deep among the dense undergrowth. They immediately begin to open fire on the special forces operatives.
Damn.
They were carrying rocket launchers as well, but due to the pressure from the military action, they didn't use the rocket launchers, fortunately. However, a helicopter from an airmobile force was hit. This helicopter was forced to make an emergency landing at a nearby military facility in Sayula, Jalisco. That's where this helicopter landed. Fortunately, no military personnel were injured in this action.
Wow, so they tried to shoot down another military helicopter in this operation. And he said that, they found him in a wooded area and they did open fire on the army. Now, it's interesting, right? I wonder how El Mencho thought about this situation, whether he thought, I'd rather go out and die guns blazing than, get captured and be in American custody like El Chapo, which obviously is, the other Sinaloa cartel leader, I believe. And, they ended up catching him and extraditing him to America. And I've always heard from a lot of these stories that these cartel bosses, the one thing they fear more than anything is the Americans and getting extradited to America. Those American extradition laws is the biggest thing they're scared of. It's actually crazy.
Subsequently, the military personnel repelled the attack. El Mencho was wounded along with 2 of his bodyguards and 2 criminals were arrested. More. Yesterday, as reported in the press release, 3 long guns, 2 handguns, a rocket launcher, grenades, magazines, and cartridges were seized. There, unfortunately, a soldier was wounded during the intense conflict. In the first action I mentioned, at the cabins as well. 2 soldiers were wounded there. Once the situation was under control, military health personnel went to the place where Mencho and his security circle were, along with his 2 wounded bodyguards. They determined that it was necessary to evacuate them as they were in very serious condition. Support from a helicopter is requested so it can land and transport them to a medical facility in Jalisco. Mencho, his 2 bodyguards, and the wounded officer are transported. Unfortunately, he died on the way.
So they actually had him in custody and they were trying to save him along with his bodyguards, as well as one of their own military personnel that had actually been wounded. You got to give it to them, right? I don't think El Mencho would have shared the same compassion. I don't think his cartel was sparing anybody. And it's really interesting to hear that, the Mexicans would have actually preferred to keep him alive. They tried their best. They tried to evacuate him. They tried to get him to safety. They had medical personnel on the scene, but he didn't make it. Now, also, it would be revealed by the Secretary of Defense that the US did assist in the operation, even if they were downplaying as if, the Americans didn't plan. It wasn't their operation, but they did confirm the American assistance. And I've heard a few rumors as to exactly how the Americans were involved in it. It was pretty crazy.
What types of intelligence information did the United States share to facilitate the establishment of this siege and the subsequent arrest of this individual as well?
Everything related to the romantic partner, his collaborators, and his close circle, that is through our military intelligence.
There was,
I insist.
Damn.
So listen to what he said, Kev. I'm going to break it down for you more in a minute, right? But they said, what did the Americans provide? How did you get the information? How did you locate him? A lot of the information about the romantic partner, the backdooring, came from the Americans.
A lot of very important additional information that the United States gave us, but all of that, once integrated and well analyzed, could give us the exact location. But the first of the romantic partner and his close circle and so on, that is the product of military intelligence.
Yeah. What types of intelligence?
Crazy, right? Pretty crazy. So look, I'm scared to even show you this, but I'm just going to keep it real, right? I did actually see this on the subreddit Palantir Investors. Hey, listen, right? Look, if the evil's going to go on, you might as well profit from it, okay? So you want to invest in Palantir, but the rumor going around, okay, and I've had my stern words for Peter Thiel in a previous video a few days ago, but they're saying on Palantir Investors, the Mexican cartel leader El Mencho killed today was assisted by Palantir's Gotham platform that was actually used to provide intelligence by the US-led military task force, the Joint Interagency Task Force to counter the cartels. The newly formed US military-led group that maps out the drug cartels network at the US-Mexico border. This unit specializes in intelligence collection using Palantir's Gotham platform. Gotham, that sounds scary. And it compiled a detailed target package or dossier on El Mencho, which provided the Mexican military and resulted in the raid. He was saying this confirmation. So look, I don't know if this is a rumor. I don't know if this is 100% true. This is in Palantir Investors, but there's been rumors going around that it was Big Peter Thiel, all right, that did the backdooring, right? I'm not going to say what I was about to say, but you know what I'm saying? They said Palantir be backdooring fools. I couldn't confirm or deny such statements, but you have to do your own research on that. I'll keep it real, like a quick Google search. Other than that Reddit post, I'm not seeing any concrete reporting that Palantir have been involved. Maybe that's something that they want to keep secret, but if it's the case, I can't confirm. It's just that Reddit post, right, on Palantir Investors. Maybe that's just, churning up a little bit of emotion for the Palantir stocks. But it is very, very interesting, okay? It is very interesting. Shout out to Palantir, man. They did their thing. I mean, if they did do this, that's crazy. Now, funnily enough, all right, there's another, apparently this has been debunked, but I still want to share it with you because it's interesting. But there was a rumor going around that the female that El Mencho ended up getting backdoored by was actually an OF girl, right? So they're saying this is apparently debunked, all right? Apparently it's not true. Apparently it's false. You know what I'm saying? Listen, if it was OF or Palantir, all right, these are two titans of industry in the US that just need to be supported, okay? I feel like the OF and Palantir link up might just be the way that we just clean up the streets once and for all, okay? Is what it is. But interestingly enough, okay, during the defense secretary's speech on this situation, he would also speak about where the cartel are actually getting these weapons from. And he did touch on the fact that RPG that was seized was from Russia. Those guys always causing problems with their weaponry getting into the wrong hand. If you've been a long time supporter of my channel, you'll know that I actually did a video about a gang in London called Moscow 17, and they call themselves Russians because they get a whole bunch of guns that they shouldn't have in England imported from Russia. Apparently, the cartel are on the same business. But interestingly enough, setting aside the RPGs from Russia, ironically, in a crazy turn of self-destruction, he would actually confirm that 80% of the weapons that were seized from the cartels actually are from US origin. So the US give us and they take us away. So you know what I'm saying? They flood in the streets with the guns, and then Palantir's allegedly blowing them up and taking them back. So it's a beautiful circle of life.
Mencionado aquí hablando de la estrategia general.
I'll just read this since it's not translated. I'll be your translator for this one. How about that? So he says, it's already been mentioned here. Speaking of the strategy general, since the beginning of the administration, 23,000 weapons have been seized. A whole lot of weapons that they've taken. Since the start of those 23,000 weapons, 80% are of US origin. That's quite a lot. It's a bit of a problem. So in this case, the proportion is roughly the same. So they're saying that in the same operation, they received 80% of the weapons from the US. 80% on the guns of Earth are probably from the US. That's what they're saying in the comments. From 2006 to 2018, Israel was sending over 2,000 guns and rifles to the Mexican military and police force, yet those same weapons ended up in the hands of the cartel due to the corrupt government. Yet they don't mention it. It's fine. People just love to make everything about Israel, don't they? Oh, he just said 80% of them come from America. Well, what about Israel? Well, we can dig into that another day, but I don't really even care about Israel like that. But anyway, government workers have also been spotted patrolling the streets with heavy artillery. Okay, apparently the government are trying to keep the streets safe in light of all of these crazy things going on. This says, anybody know what firearm this lady is rocking? I believe she works for a prosecutor's office in Mexico. And in the picture, she was defending it from the recent cartel attack. Look at this. I mean, That's a crazy way. I'm not gonna lie, that's a crazy gun. Do you think people are gonna know what gun it is? ARX 160 Beretta sort of operates like an AR-18 5.56 Stenangs. Interesting. They're saying that chatter looks pissed, man. I wouldn't want to run into that chatter for sure. Unfortunately, though, apparently, in spite of everything going on, tourists have been looting stores in Mexico. It is still out of control. It's still a mess. And I hope these aren't American tourists, for the love of God, because that would be a bad look. You guys just went and screwed everything up. You Palantired the whole country into oblivion, and then you went and looted the stores. But we don't know if these are Americans. Let's see
like this for these people. No, stop.
Yeah. It's the American.
It's embarrassing, guys. Thank you.
I live here. I've lived here for years. I'm not gonna rob a place.
That's so embarrassing. And that one too.
Yeah.
That is embarrassing. I'm not gonna lie.
Finally,
that's the cartel.
Están robando las cosas estos gringos, güey. Sí. No, están robando las cosas. Lo estoy exhibiendo. Gracias. Well, these guys, they put the things back. Still things like these.
So I can't lie, that's probably the most civilized looting that I've ever seen. But that is a mess. It says there's so many people out there just waiting for the opportunity to be a trash can human as long as they don't get into trouble for it. That is very unfortunate. So if I'm not going to rob it, someone else will. Yes, I love the woman who called them out at the beginning. No, they didn't. Don't lie. I don't think the cartel, it didn't look like the cartel had turned over that store, right? I don't know if that's what really happened. I'm just going to leave you with a couple of interesting updates for you guys here, okay? So apparently, all right, despite the total chaos going on in the streets of Mexico, there are actually some experts saying that this entire takedown of the cartels and kind of the fall of what's going on in society might actually have been a calculated political play from the Mexican government. So there's reporting here from CNN. It says how Mexico hunted El Mencho with help from his lover's trusted man and U.S. intelligence. Now, there's some interesting tidbits in this article that I'm going to show you if I can find them. One sec. So this says, why did Scheinbaum act now? And people have been wondering, why now? Why has this happened now? What is the point suddenly that you want to take down El Mencho? Now, we did hear from that previous testimony, though, that they were trying to get him for years. And, that time when they actually blew up those helicopters and killed those Mexican soldiers, that was actually a time they were trying to get him out here once previously it didn't work out. They're saying this operation comes at a consequential time for Mexico. With Trump threatening cross-border intervention, Scheinbaum will have been keen to show that she's clamping down on the hard drug gangs. However, it also represents a calculated risk. Given the proximity of the World Cup to the cartel-fueled violence the drug lord's death has unleashed, Guadalajara will be hosting matches this summer in what's expected to be an economic boon for the state of Jalisco, and Scheinbaum will no doubt be wary of scaring off would-be tourists. So it's ironic because it kind of scares tourists in the sense that the cartels are literally burning the city to the ground, but also you're taking away their control. Now, I wonder if America also wants to kind of help with this, the World Games of the World Cup, because the World Cup, I believe, is playing in America, not North America, it's a whole bunch of countries, I believe. Maybe it's North America, maybe that's the way it works, but it's like, I believe it's Mexico, Canada, the United States. There's a bunch of different cities that are getting games in the World Cup. They definitely don't want cartel business going on, okay? And unfortunately, those cartels might have just blown a good money-making opportunity if they'd have kept their heads down. But anyway, so that maybe the opportunity to capture Oseguera, the man who the US have classified as a specially designated global terrorist with $50 million bounty on his head, was simply too good to pass up. It seems to me that the Mexican state made a calculation where the numbers worked out in its favor. There wasn't a better opportunity to capture him, Armando Vargas, a security program coordinator at the think tank Mexico Ivuela, told CNN. He said, knowing that the retaliatory violence was likely to occur, the government determined it had the capacity to contain the disruption and maintain governance and restore it in a short period. So he's basically saying they actually knew that this was going to happen afterwards, and they said, you know what, let's do it now. Let's not have this type of shit going on when the World Cup's going on. And actually, it's quite smart. Vargas added that the possibility of the Jalisco cartel now splintering and descending into internal fighting seemed unlikely. Now, I don't know if that's unlikely. Much of their leadership remains free, operating through a kind of franchise system. They really out here franchising the cartel like McDonald's. I've never heard that before. That local bosses have autonomy in decision-making, but despite the potential violence, I don't foresee a short-term fragmentation of the cartel that would lead to excessively intense violence. Indeed, Oseguera had already had to cede some organizational control over the group because he was on the run from authorities, said Gustavo Lopez Montiel, a political science professor at the Monterrey Institute of Technology. Choosing to eliminate Mencho while some of his lieutenants remain demonstrates this capture is obviously important, but it's also symbolic. David Moore, a senior analyst at International Crisis Group, said the drug lord's death might weaken the Jalisco cartel and the possibility of further violence within the group, while also presenting other cartels with an opportunity to encroach on their territory. Still, as Moore pointed out, whatever the effect on Jalisco cartel, Mexico will be hoping that one man in particular sees Oseguera's death as a meaningful development, Donald Trump. Okay, now this is basically Mexican states that are affected by the cartel presence, and don't get it twisted and think, oh, there's a few states that aren't affected. No, this is just the Sinaloa cartel having significant presence, right? Now you got the Jalisco, they got the center of the country on lock, they got some of the borders on lock, right? Northeast, they got the Northeast on lock by the looks of it. The Gulf cartel, they got the Gulf's on point. The new Michoacan family, they're doing their thing, and then United cartel. Don't get me the United. The cartels unite. We got a big problem. Okay, but that is crazy. All right. CJNG have definitely got their area on lock. I wonder what's going on in Morelos that they couldn't quite lock in. But anyway, that's not for me to say. Okay, a couple more things I want to show you before I wrap this up. Now they're saying, in spite of what I just showed you in that article, where they're saying, oh, the leadership's fragmented, all that kind of thing. So this is going around, ironically, from Atlantology. They're saying Mexican army with a huge dagger in overtime. The Mexican army has apparently killed the CJNG cartel's second-in-command who orchestrated yesterday's attacks. So they're saying, Insider Wire is saying that actually there was get back. All of the chaos that was pushed by the second-in-command in the cartel, they've taken him out too. That's what they're saying as well, okay? And basically, people saying, hey, no, this is Atlantology, so let's take this with a pinch of salt, right? They're saying, ain't no way the Mexican army is now making all these eliminations all of a sudden after not doing anything for years. Something stinks. People saying it's all about the World Cup. Everybody's trying to get the World Cup sorted, right? We don't want to have, I mean, a lot of crazy stuff going on in America that might make people not want to travel for the World Cup, but okay, this is definitely probably needed. But apparently people are saying his second-in-command is still alive. It's still his stepson, LO3, never died. It's in his close friend died, who was also a big operator. Word on the street, right? It's not even word on the street. Everyone claims, just like they mentioned Menchito being gone, LO3 is of Valencia, the same family that funded CJNG from the start and Mencho married into. The whole reason he's LO3, while Menchito is Menchito, Mencho's son, who's in prison for life, was LO2. Interesting. Okay. Now, last thing I want to show you, there have been videos of El Mencho's body going around, which I won't show you. There's been videos and pictures of, you know, the aftermath of some of these cartel attacks. I can't show you those here, but what is really interesting is basically what was found in his apartment. There was photos that were going around of the apartment that he left behind. There was drugs and pills and food locked away. Okay. Apparently he's got drugs there that were basically to combat the stress of consuming stimulants like cocaine and meth. He might have been getting high on his own supply. People saying it was well documented he had kidney and liver failure. And I hope this raid wasn't because they traced the shipment of peptides to him from China. Right, this is in the biohacker subreddit, so I guess he got the peptides on deck. He probably looks maxing like clavicular in there. So this is another video that's going around. They're saying apparently this is the house where El Mencho lived, and he was definitely living pretty good. But this was apparently $1 billion cartel. I'm not going to lie. I'm not trying to be too high and mighty. It looks like a decent Airbnb vacation spot, but I'm thinking you $1 billion brand. Like I was thinking it would have been a bigger compound. But then again, he obviously has to move around a lot. Maybe this is just where he was resting his head at the time. But you know, the place has clearly been turned over. I don't know whether they raided this specific property. It did look like a little bit of a mess. But maybe that's how he was living, you know. But again, I think seeing stuff like this and hearing that he was backdoored by a woman, it just goes to show you like the common humanity of this situation. You know, moving from place to place. I think I see when I see this video earlier, there was a bunch of like fresh fruit in the kitchen. He's got to, El Mencho's got to eat. The boss of the cartel's got to eat.
Take it out.
No, he's got to he's got to fly his girl out. He's got to get his peptides in. Probably get a little workout. You know, he's just living a normal life. It's definitely a nice property, but it's not the type of $1 billion enterprise property. I'm thinking Peter Thiel lives in a better spot than this for sure.
Good defense, boy.
You know,
good defense, boy.
It's decent. It's decent. I don't know. I remember seeing in Narcos like how Pablo Escobar was living. And he had his own mansion inside the jail cell. So you know, it's definitely different. But I don't know. It's just fascinating to see. It's fascinating to see how what was left behind. You know, as a snapshot of the life that he was living. Probably did have to travel a lot. Was probably spent a lot of time on the run, trying to stay out of the way. But it is spooky to see, and it's definitely a nice property. It's a modern property. He was saying I expected nicer for how rich he must have been. That's true. People saying he probably moved between properties so often. There's no point in building one big nice one. People saying yeah, it's not like in the 80s with Pablo Escobar at the beginning and mid of his career. He built up Hacienda Napoles and even had a zoo, a water park, and a bull ring there. Back then, the narcos were trying to do their business quietly, bribing or blackmailing local and government officials and offering them only when they really had to, silver or lead. That's quite a cool phrase. Back then, there were no cartels sporting mini armies driving around in armored pickups with machine guns going against the army. They understood there was little to gain by going against the government, and only when the government changed their attitude towards the cartel, the gloves were off. Now it's a free-for-all, the cartel against cartel, cartel against government. As a result, cartel bosses now are like leaders of terror organizations like Al-Qaeda or Al-Shabaab, and they don't stay in one place long. Apparently, they move every 3 to 5 days. That's no way to live now. That's no way. It's great. People saying what's insane about this. The irony of owning so many Jesus and Maria figures. That's really interesting, right? With a lot of religious people, it's performative. It's really, really interesting, right? As someone from outside America that's living in a deeply religious country, I've noticed a few common trends. People born in the faith rarely actually practice it and use loopholes to make as less effort as possible to practice it. Criminals always suddenly find God the moment they get caught. And violent people often treat prayer like a out-of-jail-free card, assuming God's forgiveness wipes away their violent actions against other. It is really interesting. So look, I'm not surprised to be hearing that this is some of the way that it went down, but it is really, really interesting to just know how exactly they call El Mencho. Now, I do think that there's going to be power struggles within the organizations, within the cartels. I don't know if I believe that they're running a franchise-style operation.
I'm a hustler on a mission, grinding for that spot, a brand new pot to piss in. Trying to school my partners, I don't think they pay attention. Sticking to my vision, on the road to the riches. Every single day, I'm a hustler on a mission, trying to get 100.